Conspiracy theories are most often a smokescreen to divert us from the true evil.
My dad was right. This family's money is dirty.
Imagination is far more fascinating than reality.
Welcome to Working for Uncle Henry, the podcast. I'm the series author and your narrator, Angela Mullins. Chapter 30. Post-fashion show parties were one of Jennifer's favorite parts of the Fashion Week events. At times, she preferred to go dateless, more freedom that way. Among the Gucci post-show party attendees was one of the most exciting new rock singers on the world scene. One smash hit album and a good PR man had Mikey J in the center of the celebrity spotlight. He wasn't dateless when he arrived at the party, but his date was when he left. Jennifer liked what she saw and took him back to her studio apartment she kept in the Moreira district of Milan, where she spent 1 to 2 months out of the year.
"Do you have to leave so early?"
the young singer asked the next morning, reaching across the mess of bed covers for Jennifer's hand as she rolled to her feet.
"You might be here for fun, but I'm here for work."
"All work and no play?" Jennifer moved closer, her mouth a breath away from his.
"We can play again tonight."
She stepped away.
"If you'd like."
"Oh, I like." Jennifer quickly showered and dressed while Mike E. lit a joint to wake up. A knock at the door brought a delivery of flowers. Jennifer carried them to a table to check the card. It wasn't an unusual occurrence, but she was still curious.
"Now, who's sending you flowers?"
Mike E. asked playfully as he brushed his long dark hair from his face. She read the card and tossed it on the bed.
"Vincent? Is he my competition this week?"
Jennifer went into the kitchen to make a cup of her favorite mushroom coffee.
"It says he wants to meet you tonight. Does that mean we can't play together? Where's this place, anyway? Jennifer, darling, please meet me tonight after your show at 24 Gilmer. I need to see you. Vincent."
Jennifer grabbed her tote bag from the couch, took the card from Mikey's hand, and headed to the door.
"I'll let you know."
It was a long day of being styled and prepped, all for a 15-minute show. After Dolce & Gabbana wrapped, Jennifer hired a taxi and headed to the address on the flower card to meet her father, whom she hadn't seen in 3 years. That time, his objective was pitching her an investment scheme. Scam was a more appropriate description. What was he going to pitch this time? The taxi stopped in front of a shipping company. It was an odd location to meet, but maybe not for Vincent Vincini, who was typically up to something. She hesitated before getting out, not in the mood for getting mixed up in whatever scam he had going, but part of her wanted to see him, especially after what Zachary had told her. She needed to know if her father was in league with Simon Zachary. She paid the driver with the promise of a sizable tip if he waited. That and the smile she flashed ascertained his agreement. The only activity around the shipyard was one cargo van at such a distance she could barely determine its possible movement. The sun was setting. It would be dark here soon, even with the sparse night lighting now flickering on. Her intuition told her this probably wasn't a good idea, but she approached the door of number 24 anyway, took a deep breath, and went inside. She stood in the doorway to assess the room. The warehouse was empty except for a few stray crates and a wooden work table at the other end. One bare light bulb hung above the table, the only light switched on. The table sat underneath it like giant bait. She scanned the room right to left and left to right as she cautiously moved toward the table. Halfway there, she heard a soft scuffle behind her. She turned to look and was certain she saw a dark shadow pass by and disappear. But that's what shadows do when you move, right? When she turned back around to continue her approach to the work table, she found herself staring directly into the black eyes of Simon Zachary. He spun her around, wrapping his strong arm around her arms, and dragged her to the table as she squirmed and cursed. He quickly moved her head down onto the table. She groaned as splinters cut into her cheek.
I'm tired of playing games, Miss Vincini. You will cooperate now.
Jennifer cut her eyes upward and saw a shiny, razor-sharp bowie knife raised over her. As Zachary tilted it back and forth, the light bounced off its shiny blade right into her eyes. She was glad for those moments of not being able to see it. "Just kill me," she said, moving her mouth against the table, worked the splinters in deeper. She didn't really want to die, but she surmised seduction would not work on him again. Zachary laughed and snatched her head up by her hair. He spoke into her ear.
"I'm not going to kill you yet. I expect damaging your exquisite looks and leaving you alive to deal with the results will be far more disturbing than merely dying. Now, tell me, where is the spear?" "What?" "You heard me. I want the spear."
"I have no idea what you're talking about." He gripped her head tighter.
"If I did, I would tell you because I don't give a—" "Shut up!"
he shouted directly into her ear. She cringed and bit her lip.
"Your father was a complete failure at finding it, but your uncle knows, and he'll want you back."
He loosened his grip and stepped back just enough to inspect her from head to toe.
"I just need to give him a little motivation."
He lifted Jennifer's hand and placed it flat on the table.
"How important are your fingers for modeling? That won't handicap you much, will it? We'll save your beautiful face for the real threats."
He traced the knife blade down her cheek enough to scratch but not draw blood, as the splinters had. Then he raised the knife, and with one swift downward stroke, a gunshot rang out from behind just before Jennifer felt a pain in her index finger. The knife dropped to the table, and Zachary fell to the floor. Jennifer caught her breath and glimpsed the dead body sprawled beside her. Blood flowed onto the concrete floor from his back. She looked toward the sound of the shot. The shooter slowly emerged from the darkness. Nice shoes, a little worn, dark slacks, dark turtleneck. The face that came into light was familiar, but not one she had seen in a while. They stared at each other quietly for what seemed like minutes. Then Vincent Vincini stumbled toward the daughter he'd barely seen since her early teens. He placed the revolver on the table beside her, his hand shaking, his breathing heavy. Fear radiated from his eyes. He turned his gaze to her bleeding finger. The knife had just grazed it as it fell from Zachary's hand. Vincent brushed the hair from her right cheek and kissed it. With one last gaze into her eyes, he jogged, then sprinted out the door from which he had entered. Jennifer solemnly removed her cell phone from the hidden Faraday pocket of her jacket, the purpose of which was more for hiding the presence of a phone than blocking the unwanted distractions of calls. She initiated an encrypted call to her uncle. "Zachary's dead," she said upon his answer.
"How?"
"Shot in the back."
"By you?"
"No, my father." There was a long pause before Henry replied.
"Is he still there?"
"No." Henry tracked her GPS chip signal.
"I have your location. Now turn and walk out. Don't touch anything or do anything else."
Jennifer returned her phone to its hidden pocket and gently stroked her cheek that was still damp from her father's kiss. A touching moment. Rare for Jennifer. Well, I like to joke that my accents can travel the world in one paragraph. My British can turn to Italian, German, maybe even Russian before it ends up in Brooklyn. Jennifer's accent has been more of a challenge to determine what it should be. While I always knew her voice would be smooth and suggestive, the accent itself was a little up in the air. Just think about it. She was born in France to an American mother and Italian father. She had British and French stepfathers. She grew up in French, British, and Swiss boarding schools, and then there were frequent visits to the U.S. to visit Uncle Henry. So she's a bit of a mixed bag, or a chameleon, which suits her. Thanks for listening. Next week, we wrap up Season 1 with the final chapter of Working for Uncle Henry.